Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who just taught his first day of classes today. I'm going to be reviewing the album The Baby by Samia, and this is going to be a positive but slightly patronizing review. Let me explain why. As you can see behind me, I went and saw Samia in concert, and she opened up for Hippocampus. I actually saw them twice, once in Toronto and then once in Syracuse. And a weird thing happened, when I went to the show in Toronto, that was the first one. It turns out we paid the money for the meet and greet, but we got there like 3 hours too late because of Toronto traffic. So we didn't get to meet Hippocampus, and we're kind of like sitting in the merch area, And I was probably the only person in the entire place over 30 years old. Hippocampus has a very young fan base, and so we were listening to the opening act, which was Samia. And we heard her sing, and I was like, this is pretty good. I like this. This is rockin', good voice, good songwriting, interesting. And then I kind of like went to see her in person. And there was this kind of weird feeling where it was like the sound didn't quite match the presentation. She was doing a lot of sort of like humping the ground and like flashing her bra and like showing off her belly button. And it was this sort of weird thing where like this kind of overt sexualizing didn't quite work with the music. Now that wasn't a big deal. I thought this is fine, I'll pay attention to this act, because her music was good, even though this kind of distracting presentation wasn't, it didn't seem to match the music. Then when I saw her in Syracuse, I went with my whole family. And this is where it got really problematic, because I went with my daughter. And my daughter likes music and she wants to be a musician. And so I'm thinking this is like this great figure that she might be able to look up to, because Samia writes her own music, writes her own lyrics, plays guitar, sings, performs, does everything, right? But the whole time, my daughter just got more and more annoyed at the flashing of the bra and the kind of sexual stuff, to the point where I just had to just tell her, like, just focus on the music. And I think in time, my daughter will come to sort of get over that. But it's just this kind of funny thing. I did after the show, because I'm basically positive that when my daughter's a little bit older, she'll come around to this music and she will be happy to have met Samia. So I actually had them take a picture together. I'm not going to show you my daughter because that's, her privacy. She's a child. But then you can see me in the background, goofy, like, yay! Hopefully my daughter can be cool like this singer, but maybe without the humping the guitarist thing. So that's my kind of weird sort of patronizing beginning here to this album, where I was very excited just to listen and not to see, because it just didn't feel that this visual presentation of herself was sort of honest. Like the music is very soul-searching. It doesn't feel like rawly sexual or anything like that. So it just seemed like maybe she feels that if she does that, then it'll be more successful, which makes sense based on objectification of women. Or maybe I'm totally off, and that's just what she likes to do, and I'm being a complete patronizing jerk, and I'm telling her what to do, and I shouldn't do that. If that's the case, I sincerely apologize. If you know more about Samia than I do, you can put that in the comments. Skye, you patronizing jerk, what do you know about her? But I will say that just listening to her music was a great pleasure, and I really think that she's a very good artist who's going to be coming up, and if the world was a more just place, I think she'd be more famous. I feel the same way about Hippocampus, which I think is a great band. You can see, I've done like 5 reviews of them. They've been the most important band in the development of this channel because their fans are like the best. And whenever I review them, I get a lot of feedback and a lot of help and a lot of support. I'll put one of my videos of their reviews up there. But she does a lot of the things that Hippocampus does well. Rock and roll music that is sensitive, that is smart, that, it feels young, right? I mean, I think she's even younger than them. I think she's in her early 20s. It feels young but intelligent, right? Like the lyrics, she writes these lyrics that are very intelligent, very mysterious. Like they're mostly romance songs, but they're not very straightforward. Like there's always like one element or two where you don't quite get them. And musically, the way it's produced is great. And it turns out one of the auditors of this channel who hopped on back in the first Hippocampus video, it's like Spark 1492, something like that, pointed out to me, and I didn't know this, Hippocampus produced this Samia album. And the members of the band are playing on this album. So it's kind of like not really, but it's kind of like an extra Hippocampus album. And I like everything they've ever done. So we're now starting to get this kind of like cosmos of Hippocampus-inspired music. And I guess a lot of it was recorded in their home state of Minnesota. So I would definitely say, if you have any friends who do that thing of talking about how rock and roll is dead and there's nothing interesting being made anymore, and millennials and Generation Z just sit around at a computer with headphones on, you know, hitting go on GarageBand, play them these two acts. Play them Hippocampus and play them Samia, because they are very quality rock and roll music. The thing that she does really quite well is that the problem that I had with that presentation is that I didn't quite believe it. It was presenting as sort of like, I'm really confident in myself and I'm gonna flash and I'm gonna grind, but I didn't believe the confidence. I still felt the insecurity behind. And that conflict between sort of presenting confidence and feeling insecurity is very rich artistically. And this album, The Baby, presents that very well. Even the title, The Baby, implies it, right? I mean, you don't want someone who you consider to be the baby grinding around on the floor, and this great confidence and insecurity comes through throughout the entire album. And it's a good basis for the feeling that her music is able to give you. The main thing I had to get over is her singing. So I don't know where this started. I think it was because of the 90s. And when you were in the 90s and you were as exposed to as much Alanis Morissette and the Cranberries as I was, I developed what may be a slightly misogynist bias against a certain kind of female voice. That is a female voice that breaks up. You know what I'm talking about? You know, obviously better than that. But that basic idea where it kind of breaks up. It's a very 90s feel, and it's something which I initially don't like. Like, I hear it, and if Samia, if I hadn't seen her in concert and liked her music and had this whole story, stood very goofily behind her in a photograph, if that hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't have read this album, because I would have heard that singing and I wouldn't have been able to break through. But I'm glad I did, because often I don't like that trick because it hides a weakness in the voice. In this case, though, her voice is spectacular. I mean, her range is really something to pay attention to. And she has a melismatic quality, you know, the ability to extend out a note, a syllable over many, many different notes that is really high quality. And in general, she has sort of two different registers of her voice. She has a very intimate sounding voice where like you can hear the crispness of the recording, the crispness of like how she like aspirates. And then she has this kind of acrobatic up and down singing style. And she mixes them together quite well. So that's my sort of overall take on it. A very well written album about overconfidence and insecurity and mysterious love songs and excellent lyricism, well produced, quality rock and roll. I'm now going to go track by track in my Pink Citroën, as I like to do. So I'm going to take you through track by track on the album so you can think about what you think. I am going to preface every song. There's like, with an artist like Samia, there isn't that much out there. So you kind of have to like grab on to whatever it is you can. So she happens to have done a track by track analysis of this album for Flood magazine. I don't know what Flood magazine is. Is it run by the guy from U2? I don't know. But you should check it out. I'll put a link in the description where she describes what each song is about. So I'm going to kind of quote that because that helped me get through. Because she writes lyrics, like I said, mysteriously, and that's really to her credit. You feel close to her. You feel like she is revealing parts of herself and that she's confessional, but it doesn't feel adolescent. It doesn't feel self-pitying. It doesn't feel cheap. You kind of have to work to get the emotional connection here. So it starts off with the track Pool, which according to the Flood magazine is about staring at the moon from a pool, knowing that the feeling can't last forever. So this beginning track reminds me of the beginning of Hippocampus's last album. You can feel their influence, kind of a vaguely formed introduction. Reminds me of the 1975 as well, just kind of a vaguely formed introduction that brings you in atmospherically, and then you hear someone singing like a little lullaby to her, which I assume is her mother. It turns out, and I didn't know this until yesterday, that mother is the voice of Peggy Hill, Kathy Najimy, the famous actress. Apparently, her father is Dan Finnerty from the Dan Band. I don't know anything about them. I hope they come out with an album, because I've heard of them, but never reviewed them. And he's apparently from Rochester, New York, which is where I live. So that's cool. But this singing to the voice is nice. There is actually a lot of discussion on this album about parents. Like, she talks about her mom, she talks about her dad, she talks about her parents. And I like this because remember how I've been talking this whole time about this fragility that she projects, you know, this sort of insecurity. I think somebody in their early 20s who can admit how connected they still feel to their parents, it makes it stronger as opposed to sort of pretending that they're not. Nice kind of swirling keyboards, and the voice just hangs over and she shows off her voice. And it's cool because it kind of grows in intensity. And this is the only point on the album where all of the lyrics aren't entirely clear, like you can't hear what each word is. So then we go to the track Fit in Full. This is, according to her, judging herself for caring so much about the way her body looks. So this seems to be a song about feeling fit. She sings about rice vinegar and kale, which is pretty funny. Doing well, a cool kind of like lots of good production on the music here. I started to get used to the voice at this point, kind of breaking up and down. A very catchy chorus. Again, though, like a lot of this chorus is about like taking off her clothes, and it's that same kind of thing of like, you don't have to always talk about it. But I guess it makes sense. If the song is about feeling that you think too much about the way you look, I guess it makes sense in this context. The way she describes herself here is as hollow and amazing, generous and vacant, which is pretty intriguing. Like, I don't fully understand what that means, but given the context of the whole album, I can actually piece that together from how she presents herself. There's kind of a simple guitar solo, which is nice, and in this song, she again sings about her mom and dad. Still very quite nice, catchy song. Nice upbeat kind of rock track, much like the next one, Big Wheel. And I like this track because the lyrics are, according to her, about being hyper empathetic and forgiving when you realize that you've been harboring resentment. And I love that because that happens to me a lot. I tend to be hyper empathetic. I tend to, you know, when I got mugged in Paris once. And after getting mugged, the only thing I could think of was the poor socioeconomic conditions of the person who robbed me, you know? Like, I didn't let myself feel angry. I felt bad for the person who robbed me. And I needed to just be angry. And, you know, and so this whole song is all about, like, having these bad friends and this anger and, like, trying to manage the feeling that you have when you're forgiving somebody maybe too much, when you're being maybe having too much compassion. And you can have too much compassion. And that's what she's singing about. I like to say this when I can. If a singer is singing about something that you don't hear about, you need to solo it out. You need to give it credit. You need to say, this is important. I would say that a song about having too much compassion is worth noting. It's hard to tell that's what the song's about. I mean, a lot of it's about, you know, I got a big wheel in Montana and I got bug bites on my legs. It's a little bit unclear what she's saying. But when she actually talks about her friends, here they are. I've got an old friend in Japan and she's been mad at me before. It's just that she and I have got nothing in common anymore. He feels bad for doing what he did that night. She bought new shoes in Tokyo. And I really like this idea of like losing friends. And again, this is pretty well done for someone in their early 20s. I remember that time in my life as well, and feeling like you're losing friends and that you don't have things in common with anybody. She's sort of describing this sort of passage into adulthood, from young adulthood to normal adulthood, which sucks, because being a normal adult is not fun. You don't make many friends. It's not easy to make friends or meet people. It's hard. My advice to her would be just to make up friends with that person in Tokyo. But then she says, I'm really gonna bloom with this empathetic shit. And I like that because it shows that she doesn't always take herself too seriously. Singer-songwriters like this who write good lyrics have a tendency to take themselves too seriously. When she needs to, she'll throw in a swear here or there to just make sure that you kind of undercut it. like she's kind of making fun of herself. This has a great post-chorus instrumental break, which if you like Hippocampus, you're going to love this. It's very well produced. And then here, after that point, the voice is at the most calm. It goes high but doesn't break. And just some wonderful calm drumming. I don't know if this is the drummer from Hippocampus, Whistler or something or other. I forget his last name. His father watches my videos, so I really should know the last name. But I compliment him a lot. He's one of my favorite drummers in rock and roll right now. Just a very calm drumming that's just excellent. You know, just like a very well played beat. Not flashy, but if you like good drums, listen to this track. The next song is called Limbo Bitch, in which she's talking about pretending to be really confident. So we're getting back to my initial problem. This idea that she's aware of the fact that she's not as confident as she pretends to be. This has, sorry, I gotta turn off my beepies right here. I don't know why I don't just turn everything on Do Not Disturb. It's really silly. So this has almost like a slightly babyish voice at times, but it's cool because she alternates between sort of these verses where there's just two lines, you know, like good fox, they bite, you won't, and then verses of longer lines. And really on that one verse, if you ever do listen to this song, the way that she sings, good fox, they bite, you won't. The way she says you won't, that's a really good example. Listen to it on headphones. I mean, it's like she's in your head, like just right there. It's really quite good. The repetition of the chorus comes in with like a doubled voice, and it's really quite strong. The next track, Stellate, which she says is about making peace with old traumas. This is a very kind of mysterious song about maybe an old lover, about insecurity, very minimal, just 2 chords, just kind of going back and forth. It's not pretentious, and nor would I say is it sort of intentionally obscure. I'm going to play you a little bit of this song because I think it shows a little bit of the singing that I like off this album. I'm going to play a little bit from the chorus if I can get to it here. See, it does that up thing, but then when she's not doing that, do you hear that sort of like the closeness and intimacy in that voice? I don't know, listen a little more carefully. Very, very charismatic singer as well, and I think that'll grow. Like, I sort of predict that in 10 years when she's been doing this for a lot longer, her albums are going to be just insanely good because I think she really has all the structure here. I think she needs to sort of have a little more faith in herself and just kind of keep writing. But a really good track there. Very kind of 90s feel throughout a lot of this album. I guess that makes sense with any kind of indie rock. Just the you know it reminds me of that. And even the words, you know it, but I can say it for you. That's a very kind of vague, okay, whatever, 90s lyric. Then there's the track Triptych, which is spectacular. It's a very, very good track. I couldn't figure out what it was about. I thought maybe at one point it was about something sexual. It's not, apparently. It really seemed that way, but maybe I'm just seeing things. According to her, it's about Francis Bacon. So she had been going through a tough breakup, and she read about Francis Bacon's lover dying, committing suicide in his hotel room. And so this is one of the famous triptychs that depicts the lover of Francis Bacon dying in the bathroom. And so what's interesting here is she's doing this thing where what she says is, I'd been through a pretty tough breakup and I felt I might be purposefully getting myself into dicey situations just to justify my feelings and write about them, my big feelings. So this is the great question, right? I mean, do good artists, poets, writers, musicians, have any real relationships at all? Or do they just go around and try to find fodder, try to find subjects for their songs? It's a little bit, you know, I don't think you need to, I used to worry about this back when I made music, but I don't think you actually have to worry about it, but it is a good question. And this really shows her range on this song all the way throughout. Just really, I wonder, I'm going to try playing it. I'm going to get copyright striked on here, but please, if you're watching from her record company, I am trying to get people to buy this music. The quality of her voice all the way throughout. Now here we go. So just hearing the range on there and the ability that she has to get up to those high notes and the low notes. And the more I listened to it, the more I enjoyed it, the more I appreciate it. That song builds really nicely, gets some more good hippocampus style drumming. If it's not Whistler, it's someone playing in a similar way that I enjoy very much. A great instrumental break. Just constantly talking about I'll be good to you. Just constantly saying I'll be good to you. It's a very desperate song. It's a good song about desperation. Feeding you my cake and eating it too. I don't know what that means. What does that mean? Does somebody know what that means? How do I not read that in a weird sexual way? Feeding you my cake and eating it too? It's just you can explain that line in the comments, please. Does Not Heal. I just don't like this track. It was okay, but it's like double acoustic guitar, a lot of that voice breaking thing. I did like the lyrics where she talks about like scraping her arm and checking to see if she has tetanus every night. I'm kind of a hypochondriac, so I like that. And there's a nice bridge with some horns, but beyond that, it's not particularly great. I don't love the next track either, Waverly, which is apparently just about being in love with some guy at a restaurant, or some woman, I guess, I don't know. Being in love with somebody who works at a restaurant. Nice drumming in the chorus, and it gets increasingly complicated, but in general, also it just makes a very specific reference to the East Village in New York. I don't know, I just get bored by that. But then we get to the next track, Winnebago, which I absolutely love. This is a departure from the rest of the album. It's not guitar-led, it's kind of bloopy keyboard-led, but then it follows her melody, or her melody follows the bloopy keyboard. Either way, it's got this great quality to the voice. That follows along with this sound. And I'm going to play this for you as well. I just want to. I know I'm going to get copyright strikes, but it's okay. I'm not afraid of the goblins anymore. So just listen to the way that her voice follows this bloopy sound and just how successful she is at singing it and the weird kind of atmosphere and emotion it incites. Okay. Winnebago. There's the cover.
He said, Bug, I think I love you, Bug. I said, yeah, I think you love me too. Even though you made me cry tonight, nothing poisonous and nothing new. So I hurled myself into the pool.
A very satisfying singing, interesting lyrics. You said, Bug, I think I love you, Bug. I said, I think you love me too. A good line, I think you love me too. And then she just goes from that kind of like staccato singing into a very melismatic, why am I shaking? Just talking about why am I shaking over and over again. The next track, Minnesota. Listen, I'm not some kind of guy who ships people, okay? That's not my thing, right? I don't understand that mentality. But this feels to me like it's a love song to a member of Hippocampus and that they're dating. I don't think that's true, but that's the way it feels to me because it's a song about like going to Minnesota and that's where the whole band's from and the song fits in that, but that's just me being silly. Her description of it is realizing I just bought a plane ticket to Minnesota, which I think makes sense if you're going to go visit your great love. But I don't know. It's another great track, a little bit more like plotting musically. These lyrics are interesting. F my feet, I'm trying to cross the street, but they keep going to Minnesota. I guess I'm going to Minnesota. Has kind of a cool, catchy, descending hook, and then even a slide guitar solo. And then the album ends with the track, Is There Something in the Movies? Which is apparently about her life growing up in LA or I don't know if she grew up in LA, but growing up in show business. And so what she says was trying to make sense of a betrayal and blamed the lure of the entertainment industry. This is just guitar and singing, which is very kind of dangerous for me with not liking a lot of her like vocal tricks and things like that. But it works quite nicely for the most of this song. Just so much range to her vocals. I ended up loving it. This lyric, is there something in the movies that is better than my love? That's a great question. It kind of ties back again to that song Triptych, in which if you're in the entertainment industry, if you're art and part of your art is talking about love or creating love, like where does love begin and artistic creation end, you know? So this is kind of an interesting question as well. Like, is she competing with something that's in the movies, right? And she delivers that line twice. Once in that kind of clear mode, and then once in the sort of high sing-songy mode, which is quite nice. She goes a little too far with like yelling and getting into it before the last chorus, at least for my taste, but then she ends it on a good quiet note. So there it is. There's my review of Samia's album, The Baby. I really enjoyed it. I plan on getting it, like getting it on vinyl, and I plan on seeing her in concert, even if it's not with Hippocampus. And I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep trying to try to encourage my daughter to look up to her as a musical presence, because she does so many things absolutely wonderfully. And, you know, okay, good. Well, until next time, I got to go move a lawnmower. That's how suburban my life is. I'm moving a lawnmower. What does that even mean? What do I mean by moving a lawnmower? Okay, until next time, there's the camera.